All right, thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. In just 15 days, Richmond's children will be headed back to the classroom all across the city. And I wanted to take this time to address the funding needs that we've heard about lately as it regards school facilities. Education has been a priority for me since I took office, and it remains a priority even today. I believe that the investment we make as a city in our children is the best investment that we can make. And that's why I've pushed for and built new schools representing $170 million in investment. That's why I'm building the first new high school in the city of Richmond in the last, that has been built in the last 40 years. That's why we have increased maintenance budgets by nearly 700%, and we have reduced capital funding in other areas to help out with school needs. Now, I'm encouraged by the actions of Governor Terry McAuliffe, who wants to increase the focus on education and general welfare of young people through the age of 21. Just last week, he established a children's cabinet, and this initiative in part is meant to address students in high poverty, low achieving school districts. And I want to commend Governor McAuliffe for focusing on youth and focusing on our communities. We certainly do need that support. The governor's announcement came only days after our own school system issued a preliminary report listing $35 million in needed repairs throughout the city of Richmond. In fact, for many months, when it comes to schools, the focus has been most solely on fixing HVAC systems and roof repairs, with some suggesting that a facilities gap is what leads to an achievement gap. Now, I agree that we need proper facilities to educate our children, and every maintenance request that we've received from Richmond Public Schools has been fully funded. In fact, my administration has provided the largest increase of capital funding and maintenance funding in decades. But I'm here today to say that we cannot address the issue of school maintenance in a silo. We cannot address that issue cut off from the other issues that we face as a school system. Performance, enrollment, graduation, and dropout rates have got to be at the core of the discussion when it comes to doing the best we can for our young people. We do a disservice to our taxpayers if we don't take a comprehensive approach. In the last few months, the discussion about Richmond Public Schools has been centered on the state of facilities. The task force that issued the preliminary report last week did a good job and a necessary job of pointing out needed repairs, and I commend them. However, the task force in its own report stated that many, if not most, of the issues identified were present in reports dating back as far as 2002. And it's clear that the neglect that is now being focused on is the neglect that did not happen overnight, and it won't be fixed overnight. However, we've also had the opportunity to acknowledge that little attention has been given to the fact that changing demographics, changing population patterns, and changing program needs have got to be factored into this discussion. Also, the much needed discussion about right sizing has still not taken place. As hard as it may be for the school system, the school board to tackle these tough decisions, we've simply got to move past the tough obstacles to determine what's best for the children in our school system. Enrollment in Richmond has steadily declined over the past 4 decades. Our school system is presently serving less than half of the students that it once served. Enrollment in our schools has fallen, even as population has grown. Now, Superintendent Bedden has done a great job in bringing to light the maintenance needs of the school system. He has also thankfully indicated that he wishes to initiate a citywide assessment of schools relative to demand. And I want to underscore the urgency of conducting this study so that we will know where and when to invest the scarce city dollars that we have. This is the responsible thing to do. This is the responsible thing to do before we can wisely invest our limited resources. And the matter of limited resources is not only a concern because of flat revenues in the city, but the state has just last week asked us to brace for more cuts as well. And so fixing our schools has got to be defined beyond improving buildings, and it must include improving outcomes. If you only look to the schools that are brand new, for example, they have beautiful new facilities and poor student performance. 2 of the 3 brand new schools we've opened are on warning status with their accreditation. In 2010, 100% of our schools were accredited, and they have held that status for the next 3 years. And these are the same schools that are now being underscored for decades of neglect regarding maintenance repairs. Presently, 30 of the 44 schools are in warning status with their accreditations, and this is because of higher test score standards. Richmond Public Schools has an on-time graduation rate of 76%, the lowest for all of the students in the state. We have a cohort dropout rate of 17%. That's the highest in the state for all students. And so the problems that our schools face go well beyond building maintenance. And I will not stand by any longer while this discussion that needs to be highlighted goes ignored. I've heard numbers get thrown out ranging from $35 million to $100 million to even somebody said $1 billion for repair and modernization, all while the city is running under-enrolled schools that are expensive to maintain and that are underperforming. Just a few months ago, there was talk about how middle school levels, we have schools that average 400 to 600 fewer students per building than similar schools in the surrounding counties. The same is true in our high schools. We have 500 to 800 fewer students that in a similar school in the county would have. And it's said that what we need is a true plan on how to achieve economies of scale, but we haven't seen such a plan as of yet. Also, with respect to improving student performance, a plan was submitted by the interim superintendent in October of last year, but that plan came up short and didn't meet school board expectations. But since that time, we haven't heard or seen a plan expressing exactly how Richmond Public Schools can improve student performance. And so I have expressed some of these concerns to the superintendent, and I want to propose a course of action that we can take together so that we can solve some of the issues that face us in this most important area. As mayor, my job is to manage competing interests. And as much as I wish the city had revenue to write a check for all of our needs, things like putting police officers and firefighters on the street, things like maintaining an aging public infrastructure, things like developing the riverfront and building a cycling infrastructure, paving streets and reducing poverty. But we simply don't have the necessary resources to do everything we would like to do. And with the school system's suggestion that they may be needing as much as $100 million in maintenance, we need to have a very serious conversation about the state of affairs before we're forced into having to raise taxes to cover these projected costs. I want to be clear, I don't want to raise taxes. As a matter of fact, I want to cut taxes. We already have the highest taxes in Central Virginia, which is hard on everybody. But at the same time, I know that everybody wants a strong and sustainable school system. So it's imperative that we undertake the due diligence necessary to ensure that the money we do have and the money we will seek is invested wisely. We've got to be sure that we've explored all options for sharing this financial burden. That's why I've reached out to businesses and financial experts to research and explore the options available to address these needs. There are several things that we need to do immediately, several things that we need to explore right away so that the next budget cycle can be acted on from a position of knowledge and not just suggestions. We need to explore, number one, financing options that may be available to support our needs. These include the use of third-party financing models, like public-private partnerships that can fund repairs while producing renewable energy and energy-efficient projects, the savings from which can repay the private company. And then we can look at the possible use of tax-exempt private activity bonds for the construction of school facilities that would be leased back to the school system. And then we could look at available tax credits that can be utilized at the state and federal level, and look at what changes ought be made to jumpstart the use of available tax credits, including the possibility of advocating an entirely new educational tax credit. Available borrowing options and the implication for the city's general revenue fund and or real estate tax rate. Possible use of capital leases, whereby a private company would finance and build a school and lease it back to RPS, who would ultimately own it at the end of the leasing process. And this last option involving capital leases is something that we can explore with respect to the new building at Highland Grove. However, it is in the budget, and we plan to keep it there. But if we can find better ways to finance it, then that is something that we'll consider. At the same time, the school board has got to undertake the work to look at growth areas, changing demographics, population patterns, and program needs to determine how many schools should remain operational in our system. This is what is needed for us to move forward together. The issue of right sizing is paramount in order to know where to invest our dollars. For example, we have got to know what schools are no longer needed. We have got to know where to build new schools. We have got to know where we are faced with continued declining enrollment. We've got to know what transportation strategies are needed. We need to know what the housing trends are. We need to know what the birth rates are. Now, the superintendent has asked for a study on right sizing, and I'm prepared to help find that money. But whether we find it or not, right sizing needs to take place. And I believe we can offer better education with lower cost. Sometimes less is actually more. And we've got to make sure the taxpayers are getting their dollars worth. I believe there are many talented people invested in our city who can conduct much needed financial and operational reviews so that all aspects of this discussion will get the attention that is needed. Ideally, by the time the school board prioritizes its list in November and we begin the process of developing our budget for the next fiscal year, we'll have the data, the plans, and the strategy we need to fund and appropriate wisely. And so building a strong and sustainable school district indeed is a top priority for the city. We all know that a strong and vibrant neighborhood is something that requires a strong school system. In the context of addressing poverty in our city, we've started the process of collaborating with schools through the use of our Anti-Poverty Commission. And I've been talking about the role of schools and the need for community-centered schools. I get it, and my record shows that I've been walking the walk. A few years ago, I said that we needed to stop celebrating mediocrity when it came to schools, that we have got to let go of the mediocrity that we have been espousing and embrace excellence. And I don't want the distraction of poor building maintenance to keep us from focusing on teaching our children and maximizing the potential of every last child in the city of Richmond. And so I'm taking these steps to ensure that this does not continue to happen. So I want to close by telling you that just a few months ago, the students from Open High came and spoke with me in City Council chambers, and I was moved by the passion of these young people. They were there not just for the students of Open High, but they said they were there to represent all of the students in the city. And there was one young lady who said that the conditions at Open High were good for an old building, But what they enjoyed most was happening inside the classroom. And I think she made a poignant point. Let's work to bring that experience to every school in the city. Let's work for the inner experience, even as we improve the outer. So thank you very much for being here today, and I just imagine that there might be a question or two. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, two questions. First, if the school system doesn't know what schools it needs or where, why maintain the commitment to building a new building at Highland Road?
Well, I was sure that that question was going to be asked, but the Highland Grove School is a school that is a part of our revitalization effort to build new communities. That's the first thing. Second thing is that we have not accurate, or we don't have specific indications of what it would cost to remodel that school, but I've heard that it would cost up to $15 million to get that school online. And so what I've been talking about is what makes sense. Does it make sense to spend $15 million on modernizing a school, or does it make sense to build a new school? And so we're looking at other ways that that might happen, but until that happens, we are committed to the school at Highland Grove. Did you have two questions?
I do. The second question is, the $35 million list from a week or so ago was, they identified as immediate needs to start the school year, mostly with HVAC and roofs. What happens when the school year opens without that work being done?
The schools will open in 2 weeks, and I don't know how you could put an HVAC system in 2 weeks. Okay? All right.
Will you be trying to get that money, Mr. Mayor, in the short term, as opposed to studying other things which will take much longer? I mean, will you look to find additional funds to address some of the $35 million?
Absolutely.
In what ways?
Well, we're looking at many ways, and we have our financial people here and our CIO here. We're looking at any available funds that we can utilize for this, we'll do it. But it needs to be clear that we don't have $100 million. And at this point, we really don't have $35 million. And so we are going to work with the school system to identify the needs that need to be addressed. However, it's concurrently, we have to do this right sizing, because why would we put a roof on a building that we're not going to use, or tear down, or HVAC in a building that is not going to be in use?
That's something that takes a long time, and these are immediate needs. Well, do you see sort of a compromise or movement towards a certain amount of money? Because most of the things sound like they're going to take a period of time, much longer than a month or two. Do you see a certain ballpark figure on what
No, I agree with you that we need to work together to find money to address the most pressing needs. Okay? Yes, sir.
How many schools or new schools are in the 5-year capital improvement budget?
I don't know. One. Okay? Highland Grove. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir.
How much are you hearing from parents in regards to this issue between maintaining the schools and improving academic performance? Are you hearing that, is it leaning toward one side or the other when you hear from parents calling in?
Well, to be absolutely honest with you, I mean, I think that there is alarm because of the media's reporting simply on maintenance. But when I talk to people in the community, they want an excellent education for their students. And as the mayor, we want to try to keep millennials here beyond the middle school years. And I don't think those decisions are being made because of maintenance. I think they're being made because of outcomes. That's why it's important for us to have a conversation that not only talks about bricks and mortar, but also talks about performance. And the statistics that I've listed here today do not bode well for a parent keeping their child in city schools. And perhaps the declining numbers in population have something to do with that.
I assume these things that y'all need to do aren't putting any students at risk immediately.
I think that what I've tried to say today is that we're willing to work in cooperation with the school system to make sure that no students are at risk. All right?
And their final report is supposed to come in November.
Yeah, and their final report is not done yet, to be fair. And that comes in November, and hopefully that will be in time for the budgetary cycle. However, if we find an emergency situation, we certainly would want to make sure that that's taken care of, as we have in the past. We have funded every maintenance request that has been made of the city.
For one more, what can you do to help?
You don't get three, you know.
This is the last one. What can your administration do to help the school system with the right sizing conversation?
Well, the superintendent has asked for a study, and we're willing to help find the resources to get that study done. But if the study doesn't get done, the right sizing conversation has still got to take place. Okay, thanks, everybody.